All right, good morning. So we're continuing our Chazzarah U'LeMaaseh. On Wednesday night, we learned Pei Ches 88, which was the laws of ensuring that milk and meat aren't on the same table at the same time, and the various different laws regarding that, which is a precautionary measure against, God forbid, accidentally eating milk and meat together. And we began 89. We did Sif Aleph. 89 also is precautionary measure, primarily the time that one has to wait between meat and milk and vice versa, as well as in Gimel, the idea of clearing the table between milk and meat as well. That's going to be in Gimel, and that's in Daled. I'm sorry. That's in Daled. Gimel is going to be also waiting between milk and meat, but different kinds. When you're not eating meat itself, you're eating a meat dish. This too, as we explained on Sunday, is a precautionary measure because, as we learned already many times, biblically speaking, the prohibition of milk and meat is only when they are cooked together in a manner of bishul being with its liquid in the cooking, as we explained at length. So it's really a precautionary measure because in theory, even eating milk and meat together itself, if it's not cooked together, would be rabbinic, not biblical. And here, this is a precautionary measure. And we explained, maybe we spoke about this last Sunday. We learned about this. I don't remember. Or this past Sunday, that the reason why when it comes to non-kosher food, we have such great precaution more than in other areas of Torah is because with food, it becomes part of us. We are what we eat. And we want to have precaution not to, God forbid, ingest anything that's even the slightest thing that can be negative. Other sins we engage in, whereas this sin we ingest because part of who we are. And thus the great measure of extra precaution. Okay, in Sif 1, in Halacha 1 of 89 of Peites, we learned the laws of waiting to eat cheese after having eaten meat. That was 1. Of course, we all know our custom that we wait 6 hours. But we went to the background of that, the customs that say not to wait at all, the opinions that say to wait only 1 hour, and our custom to wait the full 6 hours. We spoke about the importance of benching in between, right? So that's actually a separate meal. And we spoke about if there's food stuck in our teeth. And what else did we speak about? Yeah, all the laws regarding that. Now comes the reverse. If the person ate cheese and after cheese wants to eat meat, and how long they have to wait for that. So let's read. Sif Beis. Ochal gvina, if one ate cheese, mutter lechal achar basar miyat. It is permitted for one to eat meat directly following cheese. Morning. Uvovad, and with the exception that, Uvovad, with the exception, with one condition, stipulation, Sheyayin yadav, the person should look at his hands after having eaten cheese, shom davar magvina nidibem, that there shouldn't be any residue of cheese stuck to his hands, his fingers, because when he goes to eat meat, the residue of cheese might be attached to the meat that will then be consumed together. So precautionary measure, make sure your hands are clean after cheese, before meat. If it's at nighttime, where you cannot look at your hands, it's nighttime, so you can't see very well. You have to wash them. Now, in addition to washing them, he also has to rinse out, clean his mouth for any residue of cheese that's in there. And to wash it. Kinuach means to wipe it, I'll explain in a minute what that means. Kinuach, to wipe it, what does it mean to wipe your mouth out? Hushiyilo is past, that is, you chew on dough, on bread. Swallowing bread, chewing and swallowing on bread, more than swallowing actually, it's chewing. Chewing bread is a kind of wiping your teeth. Obviously, a brush would work as well. And then the kaneach piv yafa, then you rinse out your mouth with water. I'm sorry, the kaneach is kanech still means to wipe. You're wiping out your mouth together with via chewing on bread. And likewise, you can chew on anything else. That's Parve. Besides for flour, the tamri, and dates, the yarka, and general vegetables, because they themselves get stuck on your teeth, and you're trying to get something that will wipe your teeth of the cheese that's been stuck there. And he explains what chanichi means, where flour, dates, and vegetables might get stuck in your mouth. Pirosh meaning at the top of your throat, behind your teeth. So I think it's like the back of the cheek here, like behind your molars, behind your mid-wisdom teeth, is that like gap between the end of your teeth and the back of your mouth. So things get stuck there, or at least the vegetables and things like that would get stuck there. So that wouldn't work as the wiping. Okay, because they don't really wipe your teeth off very well. Okay, so we're learning two things so far. You got to make sure your hands are clean when you're done eating cheese, either if it's daytime and you observe them, or if you can't see them, wash them. Two, you got to wipe your mouth out. Now, wiping your mouth out is not with a cloth. Wiping your mouth out is by chewing a food that will act as the wipe. Bread or something else, anything other than flour, dates, and vegetables, because they don't wipe very well, they get stuck. And then afterwards, item number 3, rinse out your mouth with water, or with wine, or I think, if I'm not mistaken, any other juice as well. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. So this is very, very lenient. He does not instruct that you have to even bench after the cheese. That'd be a separate meal. Doesn't instruct that. He does not instruct to wait. Right? All he does is make sure you're clean. Your hands and your mouth is clean. Cleaning out your hands requires either observation or washing. And cleaning out your mouth is wiping with food and rinsing. And then you can go straight to meat. And many, indeed, this is their practice in many communities, where there's no waiting after cheese to get to meat. The Medvar Mamorim continues to Shulchan Aruch. When do you have to be so stringent? Right? For us, it's leniency. But when do you have to be so stringent that you need to wash your hands and wash your mouth in this two-step fashion? When the person comes to eat beef, real meat, beef, after having eaten cheese. But interestingly, he doesn't say here the biblical prohibition of meat, because he includes chaya, right? We learned in Pei Zayin in 87 that the biblical meat meat that's part of the biblical prohibition of milk and meat is only domesticatable animals, behema, whereas chaya, non-domesticatable animals, deer, which is kosher meat, is only rabbinically prohibited. But here he includes it in the stringency of needing to wash it out. Why is that? Anyone? Why is he including chaya?
It's no real meat. I don't know. That's what I would say.
It looks too close to beef. Yeah, because the Mars issue. So anything that looks like beef, then you have to wash out after you're eating cheese, before you eat that beef. But the person comes to eat poultry after having eaten cheese. You don't even have to wash your mouth out. You don't got to wipe your hands down. Nothing. What you mean? If you follow this strict letter of the Shulchan Aruch law, you have cheesecake, and without any change, without benching, without washing, without cleaning, without time, you go straight to chicken soup. Just don't eat them together. That's it. And we understand why. If you learned in Pei Zayin, the whole thing is rabbinic. It's a double rabbinic. Because A, they're not cooked together, and milk and meat biblically is only cooking. B, it's not even beef. So to take such precautionary measures in the Shulchan Aruch view that you have to wait or clean out, it doesn't even look like meat and milk, like chaya would, like a deer meat might look like meat and milk. But this is foul, it's poultry, it doesn't even look like milk and meat, it's white. And then, therefore, go straight from your cheese to your chicken. Not anything in between. Just don't have them together. This is the strict letter of the law of the Shulchan Aruch, of the Mechaber, and there are indeed some communities that actually do practice this. Says the Ramah now, however, Yesh Machmirin, there are those that are stringent. We mentioned this in our Sunday class. that the Ramah is not clear on what the stringency should be and what the limitations of that stringency are. So I'll translate the words directly, and you'll see why it's open-ended. And we'll offer two ways of reading it and settle on our conclusion. Namely, yesh machmir, now those are stringent, translating the word directly, even for meat after cheese, we are stringent. And this is our custom. What is our custom? Shekol shagvina kasha, whenever the cheese is hard, one should not eat after it any meat, including poultry, just like we would wait for eating cheese after having eaten meat. End quote. So what does he say? He says there are those that are stringent after cheese. Stringent in what degree? Stringent to what degree? Doesn't say. So one simple way of reading it is, well, we had in Sif Aleph 3 different opinions about what to do after meat before one eats cheese. 6 hours, 1 hour, or benching, washing, and cleaning up. So you might argue that when the Ramah says that we have to be stringent after cheese, just like you would after meat, he's saying apply that same standard. Whatever standard of the 3 standards mentioned in Sif Aleph that you would apply after eating meat before you eat cheese, apply that same standard after cheese before meat on whatever level. 6, 1, or wash and rinse and clean and bench. That would be one way of understanding it. And then comes out Ramah and says, well, as far as our practice, even though there is that stringency, our practice is only to be strict after hard cheese. Now, if that's the case, that would mean that the Ramah is telling you that our custom is that however long it is you wait after beef, that's how long we should wait after hard cheese. So if you're...
When you say hard cheese, you mean aged, right, Rabbi?
We'll get to what the definition of hard cheese is in a minute.
Okay.
Good question. We'll get to the definition of hard cheese. But so far, this would mean like this, if you did this reading, that whatever stringency you apply to meat, either 6 hours, 1 hour, or wash, rinse, and bench, that same stringency would apply to hard cheese, but not to any other cheese. Which means any other cheese but hard cheese, if you're following that I'm on this translation, you stick to the Shulchan Aruch's din, which is rinse, wash hands, wash mouth, and that's it. If it's not hard cheese. Because the Yesh Machmirin, those are stringent, and our custom only to be stringent to hard cheese would mean apply the standard of meat to hard cheese. That would be this reading. There is, however, another reading, and this is the way we understand it, at least in practical practice, which is as follows. There are those that are stringent for waiting after cheese before they get to meat. What are they stringent of? They're stringent of the Zohar's instruction to wait an hour, which will unpack exactly what the Zohar's instruction is in a moment. But they're stringent to follow the Zohar's instruction to wait an hour. Statement 1. Statement 2, likewise, there's another practice that we wait after hard cheese the same way we eat after meat. Now, if you follow this reading, that would mean after all cheese, you wait an hour, as per Zohar, and after a hard cheese, you wait as you would after meat, which for us would be 6 hours. And that's indeed the way, at least we in Chabad, read this Ramah, and that's our custom. And many other communities as well, especially those that are Soharic and Kabbalistically inclined. An hour after regular cheese, as per the opening line, Yesh Bachmirim Afil Basar Chakina, there are those that are stringent even after cheese to get to meat, stringent to wait the hour. And in addition, it's our custom to wait after hard cheese, just like we would after meat, which would mean after hard cheese, you got to wait the 6 hours, as per our custom to wait 6 hours after meat. Okay. Concludes the Ramah. Yesh Makilin, there are those that are lenient to rely on the actual law of the Shulchan Aruch, which is all you have to do is wash your hands and mouth. And verse Ve'em Limchos, you don't have to protest their behavior because they have bona fide sources to rely on. But they should wipe their mouth, the bread eating, the chewing. They should rinse their mouth with water, and they should wash their hands. But miyu, nonetheless, it's good to be stringent. Which level of stringency? Again, depending on how you read the first half of the Rama. Okay, that's Sif Beis in its text itself. Let's now look at some practical practice. Rinsing one's hands, the washing of one's hands that the Shulchan Aruch talks about, that is with lukewarm water, not too cold, not too hot, and no other liquids, no juices or things like that, because you're washing your hands, got to be water, lukewarm water, but it doesn't have to be natila like, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Just rinse your hands in the sink as you would normally. The Shulchan Aruch said that if it's daytime where you could actually see your hands, you don't need a rinse. Others say always wash your hands, even if it's daytime, because you can have like residue of cheese and not even notice it visually, but when you wash your hands, you'll feel it. So there are those that, even though Shulchan Aruch says if it's daytime, you see it, you don't have to wash your hands. There are those that require washing hands during the daytime as well. I would recommend doing that, especially nowadays where it's easy to turn your sink on. It's not like the old day where getting water was a whole big deal. Even if, what if you ate your cheese only with a fork and knife? There's nothing on your hands. Still wash, because you're not necessarily, there are those that are lenient, but still washing their hands nonetheless, because even if you're using a fork, without even being aware of it, you end up touching things. As the halacha says, hayadai maskani is him. Our hands are busy, so they always touch things without us realizing. Okay. Brushing your teeth would work in replacement of chewing bread. We mentioned that. Rinsing your mouth out is water and wine. The Shulchan Aruch mentions water and wine, but it could be any liquid. It could be orange juice as well, rinsing your mouth out, or anything else. And even though the Shulchan Aruch said that if you're eating cheese to poultry, there's no need to even wash or rinse at all. But nonetheless, there are those that instruct us, especially nowadays where it's easy, might as well wash your hands anyway. So even if you're of the view that you don't need to wait the full hour after cheese, still wash your hands, rinse your mouth, even if you're going just to chicken, because it's easy washing to do it. And there are those that require that stringency anyway. But it should be noted that if you have cheese on your lips, then you can't eat chicken. This whole Shulchan Aruch, which says you don't need to wash your mouth out or rinse your hands, is if you're not sure if it's there. But if you know it's there, even the Shulchan Aruch will say you have to get rid of it, because even the Shulchan Aruch agrees you're not allowed to eat chicken with cheese. So if you have a piece of cheese sitting on your lip, you wouldn't be able to eat chicken unless you removed it. So considering that, you might as well wash your hands out and your mouth, even if you're just going to go from cheese to chicken. Okay. Okay, we spoke about the Zohar. So I want to explain the Zohar for a minute, since the Zohar said, we said that the Zohar says to wait an hour. Now, the Zohar is not quite clear, because the Zohar says, and then it makes this comment actually, and we don't have enough time, I don't want to get into the whole Rebbe's comment, but the Rebbe makes a comment on the Zohar. The Zohar says like this, that you shouldn't eat, the Lashon is like this, don't eat these the two species of milk or meat, kechada, don't eat them as one, or in one unit of time. Shaita means unit of time, or in one meal. That's what the Zohar says. Now, what does b'shaita mean? In one unit of time. So shaita could mean like that's Aramaic for sha'ah. Sha'ah could mean an hour, literally, which is how again we're interpreting it. Others say it just means a significant unit of time, and therefore wait a half an hour after cheese. But the Rebbe actually makes the point that if you're going to take that angle, that it's a half an hour, someone wrote to the Rebbe that because the Zohar says shaita, which means a unit of time, he quotes another halacha where a unit of time is a half an hour. And the Rebbe says, look, if you're going to apply that standard, actually in the Zohar, when the Zohar says unit of time, shaita, it actually means a moment. For example, the Zohar says you can do teshuvah b'shaita chada b'riga chada. You can do teshuvah in one shaita. It doesn't mean an hour. It means a moment. The Zohar literally means you can do teshuvah in a moment. 1 second, do teshuvah. You decide you're no longer sinning. Teshuvah is done. In that split second. So if you want to take the Zohar's language on face value, you might actually conclude that the Zohar doesn't mean you have to wait at all. So therefore, the Rebbe says you cannot apply other definitions of shaita to the statement of the Zohar, which says to wait between milk and meat a shaita, and therefore we have to go to the literal interpretation that shaita means hour. That's the argument, and therefore when the Zohar says to wait shaita means an hour. Although again, now we understand why even those who follow the Zohar are waiting a half an hour, right? Because if you're taking the word of the Shulchan Aruch, then you just go straight from cheese to meat without any hour at all. Wash your mouth out and wash your hands. So if you're waiting at all after cheese, it's because you're following the Zohar, and yet you're waiting only a half an hour. Doesn't the Zohar say an hour? Now you have the answer. Because the Zohar says shaita, which means a unit of time. But what exactly is that unit? So as we heard from the Rebbe is making the case that in this context, it means literally an hour. Because otherwise, if you're applying context from elsewhere, it would mean a moment, which is Zohar can't mean that, because otherwise it's not really telling you anything. However, there are those that do apply the definition of an hour of shaita from other places and say it means a half an hour here, not a full hour. So there is that custom as well, waiting a half an hour after cheese. Okay. Okay. Now, what happens if I did wait the hour after cheese? Do I still have to wash my hands out and rinse my mouth out and do all that? Or do I say the hour is enough? Machlekes. And of course, we are stringent because why not? The sink is right there. We can do it. Likewise, if you're going to follow the Zohar and wait an hour, that applies to all kinds of meat, including poultry, as per the Chabad custom, indeed. Even if you, yeah. Now, he writes here that as far as children go, so because it's all stringency from the Zohar, you don't have to make them wait after cheese the full hour. I'm going to humbly disagree, certainly for the Lubavitcher. That was very strong on this. Then we educate our children. We educate our children on the standard we want them to live, not in a compromised version. That was very adamant about that. Notwithstanding
but then again, you can't force a child to fast the entire fast.
Right? One second, yeah. Notwithstanding the fact that in the previous class I mentioned that you have to take your child's circumstance into consideration. And if you gave your kid a bowl of cereal of soup, and the kid's crying from hunger, just want to go to sleep hungry, don't allow him to have the bowl of cereal and milk, depending on what age. Having said that, however, as you educate them and they get older and they start to appreciate time, don't tell them, well, Chabadniks wait an hour, but because you're a kid, I'll let you not wait an hour. Don't do that. That's not good educationally. They've made that very clear many times. And I'll give you a practical example of this. I don't know if this is your standard. I'm not speaking to anybody specifically. I mean, you, all the listeners. I'm not sure if this is your standard that you have only wool tzitzis, let's just say, or wear tzitzis at night. But never spoke about that, wearing wool tzitzis and wearing tzitzis at night. There are those I know who feel like it's too sweaty, it's too difficult. When the kid's older, I'll tell them to wear wool tzitzis. As a matter of principle, you're going to have a hard time doing that. If the kid doesn't grow up right from the start, this is the way we do it. Then at what point do you can tell the kid, okay, now you have to be uncomfortable. And now you just injected into the child this notion that the tzitzis are uncomfortable because to begin with, you're giving them comfortable ones. And now because it's older, they're making them do uncomfortable. So now his association with the tzitzis becomes a negative one. So from the beginning, we wear wool tzitzis. This is what we do. Again, if this is your standard to begin with. So likewise, I'm going to say the same thing is true of waiting the hour after cheese. When you get to the point when you're teaching your child to wait 6 hours after meat, the same thing should apply. Make them wait the full hour after cheese. Because whatever standard you're going to be having in their adulthood, when you begin your education, at whatever stage that is, it should be introduced with the full, complete custom as per your family and not incrementally, because then it can often lead to a negative feeling toward that custom because it's like, oh, it's a stringent I had to take because I got older. All right. That's as far as that goes. Okay, now what's the question with hard cheese? So the Ramah said, and the way we interpreted it is that we are stringent on after cheese, as per Zohar, therefore we wait an hour. But then the Ramah added another stringency that we treat hard cheese the same way we would meat. So after meat, we wait 6 hours till we get to cheese, as per our custom. So after hard cheese, we would wait 6 hours before we ate meat. What is the definition of hard cheese? That's the big $1 million question. So there are two different ways of understanding it. One is if the cheese requires it's aged. So there are certain types of cheeses that require 6 months of aging so you get the cheese that you want, right? I think Parmesan, blue cheese, maybe even certain types of Swiss cheese as well. I think
But
those are
blue
the
cheese is
three.
still a soft cheese, though.
I
Like
didn't
some
mention.
of these cheeses are aged, but they're not hard. Like Parmesan is very hard, Pecorino is very hard, but like a blue cheese or
Right,
Camembert, for example, is aged, but the inside is soft, like
right.
almost runny.
Nonetheless, the aged cheese has a certain density that makes it stick in your mouth more. And the same way
Yeah.
the 6 hours for meat, at least according to one opinion, is because it gets stuck in your teeth. That would apply to these cheeses that are aged. That would be one way of understanding the quote unquote hard cheese, even though it could be soft, is that it's aged and thus has the same effect as meat in terms of how it sticks in your mouth. Second interpretation is on the issue of hard cheese is it's the kind of cheese that has a certain level of mold, right? And
Okay.
that mold uh, is that it leaves a taste in your mouth longer, right? Because there's two interpretations for why we're waiting 6 hours by meat, either because it gets stuck in your teeth or because of the flavor lasts for 6 hours. The same thing applies to hard cheese, either because of the flavor lasting for a long time or because it gets stuck in your teeth because it's been aged and it has that fermentation. So if that's the case, uh, by these standards of, let's say, the flavor in your mouth for a long time or stuck in your teeth, many cheeses like yellow cheese or something like that, neither of those things apply. It doesn't get stuck in your teeth so much, and it doesn't last. The flavor doesn't last for that long, so which would mean most cheeses would not necessarily fall in the category of hard cheese.
Aged.
Of hard cheese. On the other hand, nonetheless, on the other hand, there are those that say no. If it has any sort of hardness, especially since today they put I don't know if chemicals or preservatives or something that actually harden the cheese. So even if it didn't wait 6 months for fermentation, the process of it is almost as if it waited 6 months because it has all that hardness in it.
Yeah, so this is the question I asked last time about Reb Hendel's tshuva,
So
which is very
I never
specific in
saw Rav
this
Hendel's Tshuva. I
regard.
don't know. I never read saw Rav Hendel's
Okay.
Tshuva. I mentioned that I have a book at home of Rav Hendel Piskei Din and produced by his grandson. I read it. I don't see, he doesn't mention it in there. I did not speak a rebel. I'm sorry. Maybe I should have. But I'm going to imagine that this is Rabbi Hendel's position, that because the cheeses are produced such that they result in being hard, they have that quality, and thus you should wait 6 hours.
No, it's the opposite. He says the opposite. He says like about the yellow cheese, the cheddar cheese that we use today. This is, by the way, I'm speaking. I'm not speaking in, and I didn't hear this directly from Rabbi Hendel. I heard it from Rabbi Naftali, who heard it directly from Rabbi Hendel, and
he's
this is how
lenient.
he would. He's lenient on
Mr.
the
Nussbaum said the other
cheeses
day.
today.
Rabbi Nussbaum said the other day that he was stringent as per Rebel. Okay, let's not comment because we'll wait for Rebel. I don't know. I
Yeah.
have
Okay.
someone who knows. Either way, this is the two views over here. Now, the end is there is no consensus amongst all the Rabbanim as to which way you should go. So everybody has to follow their Rav and their family tradition. So if you want to know my family tradition, I did not grow up waiting 6 hours after pizza. I did not. We didn't wait 6 hours. We waited an hour. After blue cheese, Swiss cheese, even Parmesan cheese then, even when it comes to Parmesan cheese, not necessarily did we always wait 6 hours. If it was like sprinkled and soft like that, the taste doesn't last for 6 hours. Now does it stick in your teeth like if you sprinkle a little bit in a salad. I didn't grow up waiting for 6 hours after that, to just be completely honest.
After Parmesan, really?
Depends on how you ate the Parmesan.
Okay, I understand that I don't go.
If you had like a pasta where like the majority of the cheese mixed in there is Parmesan, then yes. But like a little sprinkle in your salad, like on a Caesar salad, a little bit. Sorry.
We gotta get back. We're not to finish.
Yeah, I know. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. We have 20 more minutes. Yes, but I'm just telling you how I grew up. So everybody can take it as they will. Okay, Gimel.
Sure.
Yeah, Gimel. You do have to finish this. You don't have another class on this. All right. Tafshil shel basar. If you're looking at a meat dish, not the meat itself. So you're eating the beans and the barley from your cholent, but not the meat in your cholent. So it's a dish made with meat, but not itself. It's a stew with meat, but you're not eating the meat. Says the Shulchan Aruch, you can afterwards eat a dish of cheese. So dish to dish. So in other words, you're not going from meat to cheese. You're going from the beans and barley in your stew to, I don't know, some fish that was cooked with that had some cheese in the mixture. Let's say. So you're not eating meat and milk, but you're eating something that was cooked with meat to something that was cooked with cheese. And therefore, you don't have to wait at all. And washing your hands out in between, it's only just an extra added precaution, not necessarily required. Nonetheless, parentheses, those that are stringent and require the washing. But if you're coming to eat the cheese itself, so you're going from the meat and barley in your cholent to actual slice of cheese. After a meat dish. Or the other way around. Or if you ate the meat itself from your cholent, but you're eating that after eating that fish that was made with cheese, not the cheese itself. Then you're required to wash your hands. Right? But hope you noticed, no mention of waiting. No mention of waiting. So let's see that I'm Shuman shabasar. First of all, any fat of meat, that's like the meat itself. Which means if the meat in your cholent was fatty, it had a fat and it rendered, then your entire cholent would be considered like meat itself, because that potato and barley is soaked in meat fat. So that's off the table right there. Likewise, if you had a beef stew, like a beef soup, like a Mediterranean beef soup, also the fat is all over your soup. Maybe not in that case if you had lean meat, maybe, I don't know. But that's what he says here. The fat of meat is like the meat itself, so you have to wait the 6 hours, or the 1 hour, or the benching, washing, whatever your custom is, as per Sif Aleph.
We apply the same deal like today, where you have like, let's say, a meat microwave or a meat oven where it's been used in the last 24. Like you're not gonna, you know what I'm saying? Like let's say you're gonna eat, like, let's say something which is not necessarily meat, but it's eaten with meat. You're not necessarily, you're not gonna clean out.
Okay, so that's talking about being cooked in a meat oven.
Yeah,
it's not with meat. We'll get to that in a minute. That's gonna come in a minute. Okay, continues the Rama. Our custom today is lahachmir, to be stringent, not to eat actual cheese, after a meat dish. So that's off the table. At this point, first of all, your cholent probably has meat fat in it, which would mean that you got to wait the full 6 hours. But even more so, our custom is, even if it didn't have the meat fat, if it was cooked with meat, we treat it like the meat itself, as if you're waiting after meat itself, and therefore 6 hours as per our custom. The English one should not change and break down the barriers of accepted practice. However, to your question, Elliot, if there is no actual meat in the dish, in the stew, it was cooked in a fleshik dish. So this cholent pot is often used for meat, but today you made a pot of cholent. You can go directly afterwards to eat cheese. There's no custom to be stringent. Right? So that answers that question. So if you warmed up you toasted a slice of bread in your fleshik oven, you can eat it and right afterwards eat cheese. Our custom is not to eat cheese with that bread because it was baked or toasted in a fleshik oven, in a dairy meat oven, but it's not going to make you meat to the point you got to wait any time. So you can have that slice of bread and then the cheese right afterwards.
Can you say that that's also because of batal bashishi? Like there's no,
it's a precaution to a precaution to a precaution to a precaution, because again, biblically, the prohibition is only when the two are cooked together. What's being cooked together here? Okay. Nothing. It's mamish, a precaution per precaution per precaution. As I mentioned at the beginning of the class, when it comes to, and I mentioned this last week also, or Sunday, that we are way more stringent when it comes to kosher than we need to be. And the reason is A, because we can afford it, we can do it, it's not a big deal. B, because the ingesting of prohibition is the worst kind of prohibition from that regard, because it's part of who you are. So we stay as far away as we can as possible. Continues the Rama. So too is our custom, lechal basar, to eat meat, after eating a dish that has cheese in it, like chalav or milk. Okay, so you're not eating the cheese itself, but you're eating a dish from the cheese. So you ate that fish that has some cheese somewhere in the stew, but you're not eating the actual cheese itself. You can go right afterwards and eat your meat. Mio, however, you should wash your hands in between the cheese dish, not the cheese itself, because then you'd be waiting an hour or whatever your custom is. But after the cheese dish, before you get to the meat, wash your hands. Now, mamish. Additionally, those that are even more stringent. I'm sorry. Even if you're only going to be eating, even if you're going to be eating actual meat, right? Sorry, even if you're not going to be eating, even if you're not going to be eating afterwards actual meat, you're going to be eating a meat dish after a cheese dish. So you're going to be eating your beans and barley from the cholent. After you ate that fish that had some milk in the stew, you should wash your hands if you touched it with your hands. Final word, shamish besoda, a waiter that's serving meals, and again, touches the food that might touch the food that he's serving. And here he's serving meat, and there he's serving cheese because he works in a hotel lobby, and they serve both. He doesn't have to wash his hands between every dish that he touches, because the requirement for washing one's hands is only for the one who's eating himself. And there are those that disagree and say that the waiter has to wash his hands as well. Let's see if there's anything quickly I have to go through, and I want to finish Dalid, which is going to be easier, but I want to do that quickly. Where am I? Okay. The common custom, even among Sfardim, is to follow the Ramah, and that is to wait, not eat cheese even after a meat dish, even though they're not eating the meat itself. That's the common practice. Likewise, even if you're eating a cheese dish after a meat dish, the custom is also to wait the full 6 hours. Even though it sounded like in the Ramah, you don't have to. That the stringency is only if you're eating actual cheese. But our custom is even if you're eating a cheese dish. So we would wait 6 hours after eating that cholent that had meat in it, no matter what the circumstances. Even if it wasn't fatty, even if you're just eating that fish that was made with milk, we always wait 6 hours to eat anything with milk. Unless there was no meat in it, it was cooked in a meat dish, then we don't wait the full 6 hours, as I mentioned before. Okay. Now, here's something interesting. Let's say you made French fries in oil that was earlier fried schnitzel. Is that considered a meat dish, like your beans and barley? Or you can be lenient?
No, it's 100% considered because it's fat. It's like pure fat. It's the oil absorbs all of the flavor of the chicken.
Okay, but that flavor...
There's a transference of flavor between the fat of the chicken that goes into the oil.
Remember, it's a stringency of a stringency of a stringency. So those French fries definitely couldn't be eaten with milk, because let's say they absorbed the flavor of even that, but whatever. Let's just say that you can't eat the French fries with cheese because it absorbed the flavor of the schnitzel earlier. But does that mean you can't eat the French fries? You have to wait 6 hours after the French fries? That's what it would mean? So he says,
based on the previous principle that we learned of transference of flavor and being that it's fatty.
Remember, it's not a question of eating together, it's a question of waiting. And the waiting, as we mentioned before a few times, is there stringency upon a stringency upon a stringency upon a stringency. Right?
You're getting the tongue.
I'm not sorry. So what?
You're getting the tongue.
And therefore?
So if you have the taste of meat in your mouth.
Oh, so he says like this: if when you eat the French fries, you don't taste the chicken, you definitely could be lenient and have milk right after. For sure, okay. No problem. If you did, then maybe there's reason to be stringent. But even then, it's a stringency upon a stringency, because the whole waiting is a stringency, as I explained. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, continuing. Okay, we mentioned this before. We don't eat that toasted bread. We don't eat it with the cheese. But even though you don't have to wait afterwards to eat cheese, if the bread was toasted in your fleshik oven. Now, the question is, the Shach writes, as you see on your notes on the side, that even if you had that Parve dish, so that toasted bread, and the dish that you toasted that bread, or let's say it's Parve pasta, and you made it in a fleshik dish, right, with no cheese, obviously, but no meat either, and there was some remnant of meat from the last dish. The Ramah says even then, okay, you're not eating that pasta with cheese, but you can eat cheese right afterwards. You can eat pizza right afterwards. That's what the Shach saying. So there's a dispute as to what exactly does the Shach mean. There's a little bit of remnant of meat in there. Does that mean because it's batal b'shishim in your pasta? Is that what he means? Or does he mean that it's nothing? All right. The end is that even if you're stringent, if you're not sure, you could be lenient here, which means basically, essentially, that your pasta that you made in the meat dish, you're not going to eat it with cheese, but you can eat pizza right afterwards. It's not a big deal. That's the bottom line. Considering the shach, which says that even if a little bit's left behind, it's still fine. Okay. If you had you now, let's say that bread that was toasted in your fleishik oven was also toasted at the same time while there was meat in the oven. So now there's the steam. You have to wait 6 hours now? Many say no, you don't, because there's no actual cheese there. Although washing your hands out is certainly a good thing after you eat that bread before you eat cheese. Okay. Now, we made a comment like this. We talked about cheese dish, but not the cheese itself. So the example we gave was fish that had like maybe some milk in the stew that made it. The reality is, he says here, that it's almost never the case because cheese ends up melting. You end up having actual cheese all over the place. So that fish is very difficult to not have actual milk on it or actual cheese on it. So it's gonna be very difficult to have like a dish that's a cheese dish without the cheese itself. Maybe in theory you could find one, but it's gonna be very difficult to do that. Right? But for example, here's an example where it says you could. For example, if you had like a French onion soup, we have cheese melted in it, right? So in theory, you could take the liquid out the cheese. That's an example of a cheese dish without the cheese itself. Okay, anything else? No, let's go to Daled. Let's finish up. Okay, we're running a little bit late. I'm sorry, we started a bit late. I'm going to finish this. I don't want to not finish this. Daled. Misha achal gvina, one who ate cheese, basar, and wants to eat meat afterwards, which we said, according to the Shulchan Aruch, at least, you don't have to wait at all. You just got to wash your mouth out, etc. And even according to our opinion, where we bench and we wait an hour, nonetheless, there's another requirement. Namely, you have to remove from the table any bread left behind that you would have eaten with cheese. Right? Additionally, you cannot eat cheese on a tablecloth that was used for meat. And the same thing goes around. You cannot eat meat on a tablecloth that was used for cheese. If you put it in the dishwasher, if you put it in the washing machine, you may use one or the other. Many have the practice to have two separate tablecloths or set tablecloths for fleshik and tablecloths for milchiks. It's not an absolute halachic requirement. If you wash them out in between, they can be flipped one to the other. It's not an absolute halachic requirement. But if they're not cleaned, then definitely you have to. You cannot use one for the other. And there are those that go so far as to say that that's the case. The same thing applies to tables. So if you're eating directly on the table, you really have to make sure it's completely clean, or perhaps not even use it. I mean, in the same way it says here, unless you're washing out in the laundry, in the washing machine, you cannot use tablecloth for meat and then milk, and vice versa. Then the same thing maybe applies to tables as well. There are those that argue that make that case.
If you're at like a hotel, right, and like it's like a long table, and there's someone eating, like you're not sitting, you're like the people eating like on the same table.
So we mentioned that in Sif Aleph.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we mentioned that in Peches. That if it's a stranger, there's no problem.
Even if it's multiple people.
That's right. We mentioned that Peches.
But would you have to put like a piece of bread or a box?
So we spoke about that in Peches, that if you don't know the person, you don't even do that. It's only someone you know that you have to put that separate, as mentioned in Peches.
Jews or non-Jews?
We spoke about that also in Peches. On Wednesday, we spoke about that as well, that when it comes to non-Jews, it's a machlokes. If you know them, if you don't know them, the end is we're lenient when it comes to non-Jews, because the assumption is the non-Jew has non-kosher food, so you're not going to accidentally touch it. Unless like you're in a catering business or something where the guy's only eating your food or something, then maybe if he's eating your cheese, then you can eat together with him. Okay, we spoke about that on Wednesday. Okay, Coach can like how much more so continues Shulchan Aruch. You cannot cut cheese, even if it's cold, besakin with the knife, that you ordinarily use for meat. As I mentioned on Sunday, when it comes to knives, even with cold, we are much more stringent. And this is going to come up in later simonim, the laws of knives. But the basic principle is, the pressure of the knife makes the knife some level of absorption, but more importantly, it causes a certain level of residue to get stuck to the knife that happens even if the items are cold. And therefore, you cannot use a knife that you use for meat to then cut cheese. There's going to be residue between them. There's going to be residue from the meat come onto the cheese. Okay, we'll learn the laws about knife going more. But here we're learning the laws of separation, and therefore we're telling you, don't use the same knife for both. The laws of what happens if you did will come in a later simon. Moreover, even the bread that you're going to be eating with cheese, do not slice that bread with the same method you're going to cut meat. Some people use like a serrated big, almost like bread knife for like a roast, like one of those serrated knives. So that's the kind of knife that you can accidentally end up using for bread. Don't do that, because that bread, if you ever want to eat it with cheese, and you cut it with a bread knife, with a meat knife, you have a problem. So you should have a designated bread knife, is really what the Shulchan Aruch is saying. Don't use your meat knife to cut bread, and I'm deducting from that, have a designated bread knife, which means.
But does this apply to a clean knife or a dirty knife? Like if you have a brand new knife,
quote unquote clean, because the point is,
really?
it's very difficult to clean out a knife, as we're going to learn. That's why he's picking on knives specifically, because knives, because of that pressure, it ends up absorbing and getting residue that you don't see. I mentioned this on Sunday. If you take a knife that you think you cleaned and then put it like this in front of the water, in front of your sink, and let a thin stream of water come out of your sink, and let the water run down the surface of the knife, you will see that water will split at certain points because there's tiny little drops of residue that it's making its way around. Because even though you cleaned it, there's still a little residue. So that's why he's telling us to be more stringent and not cut bread that you're going to be eating with cheese with the bread that you cut meat with. So Levi Nu is suggesting and telling you, have a designated bread knife. Your challah knife should be used for challah only.
All right. But that's for Shabbos. There's an Indian Shabbos on that. Like to only use the Shabbos for the knife that says, Lechot Shabbos Kodesh, whatever. That knife should only be.
The knife I use for Shabbos is a bread knife that I use during the week also to cut.
Oh, really? Okay.
Open. Yeah. But it's a bread knife. That's all it is. Okay, continues the Ramah, but the same thing the other way around. That is, do not cut bread that you're going to be eating with meat using a knife that you earlier used to cut cheese. Nami also, it's also forbidden. Miyu, however, here's the solution. Here's the way you can kosherize a knife. And again, the laws and details of this kosherizing process will come in a later simon. Namely, if you stab the knife into hard earth 10 times, as we're going to learn in a later simon. Where's that going to come up? It's going to come up in, which simon is it? I don't remember, but it's going to be coming up in a later simon, the kosherizing of knives, where you stab it into hard ground, and that removes the residue. Concludes the Rama. So if you did that in between, then you can do that. So if you cut meat with your knife, and later you want to cut bread that you're going to be having with cheese, or you want to cut cheese itself, take that knife, go outside to your backyard, stab it in the ground 10 times in different locations, and that will remove all the residue. Continues the Rama. Even though you can kosherize your knives in between milk and meat quite easily, you don't have to boil any water. You just got to stab it in the ground 10 times. We all have ground. Makes it easy to do. You don't got to waste fuel. In your olden days, use up your wood. Abel continues the Rama. For Anogu called Yisrael, it's already become the custom amongst all Jews that they should have 2 separate knives, even though it's easy to kasher one to the next. And you mark on one of the 2 knives, because again, your knives are identical in those days. So you're going to make a mark on one of those 2 knives, that you should know which one's which. So which one should you mark? The milk one or the meat one? The custom is to mark the milk one, the dairy one. Don't change that custom. Because if everybody marks the milk one, and I go to my neighbor's house and I see a marked knife, I'm going to assume it's a dairy knife. And that guy was a chacham, and I want to change the custom. I'm going to mark my meat knife. And it's going to cause somebody else to make that mistake when they come to your house. So keep the uniform custom. Everybody marks their dairy knife. I mentioned on Sunday that the modern translation to that would be, make sure your dairy knives are in blue and your meat knives are red, because everybody in the world does red and blue for milk and meat. So if I go to somebody else's house and I say a red knife, I'm going to assume that it is meat. And therefore, don't change their universal custom so that nobody ends up making a mistake in my house, God forbid. Okay, any practical things that I want to... Okay, I mentioned washing a dishwasher. I explained the knife. And that's pretty much all we have. Any comments, thought, questions before? It's 9:02. Look at that. We didn't even go so over time. Any thoughts, comments, questions before we close out? Okay, a great day. Good Ner Shabbos. Wonderful Shabbos. God willing, on Sunday morning, we begin Tzaddik Aleph. Did I mention we're skipping Tzaddik?
We did Tzaddik Aleph.
I'm sorry, we're going to Tzaddik Beis. You're right. We did Tzaddik Aleph. So you're right. We did Tzaddik Beis. Thank you for keeping track. We are going to go to Tzaddik Gimel. I just know we're skipping Tzaddik.
Tzaddik Beis was very big.
Tzaddik, no, that was Tzaddik Beis was very big. That was a hefty one. Yeah, so we're going to be going to Tzaddik Gimel, God willing. Tzaddik Gimel is a small siman, right? It's only got one comment, which is to use separate pots for milk and meat. That's going to be Tzaddik Gimel. And Tzaddik Daled, I'm not doing the whole Tzaddik Daled next week. We're going to be starting Tzaddik Daled. I don't remember how much. Look in the syllabus. We'll see how far we get. And that's going to be the very, very, very common questions of, Rabbi, what do I do? I stirred my meat pasta with my milchig spoon. That's what's going to be coming in Tzaddik Daled, which is literally probably the most common question I get. That, and I washed my milchig dish in my fleshik sink. Those two are the two common questions I get. And that's going to be coming up in Tzaddik Daled this coming week. Okay, wonderful day and a good Ner Shabbos.
A große Shkoyach, a good Ner Shabbos, a good Shabbos, and thank you for everything.
Absolutely.
Thank you for making it so easy for us.
Thank you.
Take care.
I'm very much enjoying this Chazzarah. I haven't done it in 10 years. I'm enjoying it. Okay, more than 10 years. All right.